Hello and welcome to the Pet Friendly Growth Club. I'm your host and proud pet mom, Elsa Mo, and this is Birdie, of course, my one and true love and my everything. So if you have a pet business, you probably had to consider different sales channels and prioritizing among these different options, ranging from vets to e-commerce to Petco and other independent shops. Of course, there's Amazon. The opportunities are literally endless, and it could get overwhelming to manage. Joining us today is a really special guest, John Willbanks. John, from the moment that we met, I was impressed with the homework that you've done as a dog dad. You not only read extensively on canine health, but really took the initiative to try a whole bunch of different foods and different supplements until you found the winning mix for your dog Arterra, who ended up living beyond 16 years. And now you're taking this matter into your own hands. You've launched a dog supplement business that sells to various channels, both online and offline. And before this, you built and sold an Amazon marketing agency, Cartograph, that is helping big names in the pet, baby, and food brand space to thrive on Amazon. So you literally could not be a better person to speak on this topic of different channels.
Great to be here. Thanks for the warm introduction, Elsa. So a little bit about me. I started my career in product management for General Electric's LED lighting category and caught the bug for taking a product from whiteboard ideation all of a sudden into every major national retailer. I love being involved in engineering, sourcing, negotiation, qualification, sales to big box retail. And through interesting turn of events, I ended up pivoting into a different career track to build and lead the first in-house Amazon team for the GE brand, and got through that a lot of exposure to Amazon corporate and really understand how this multi-billion-dollar computer that runs a lot of the e-commerce market actually works, and added multiple tens of millions to that P&L. I liked the work, but I had been passionate about natural products for a long time. And so I left my corporate job to start an agency that specialized in consumer packaged goods and how to help brands sell those on the growing Amazon ecosystem. We were the first agency to solve a lot of problems unique to grocery in particular. And so we were kind of gluttons for punishment and the first to solve a lot of those problems, but really built a best-in-class playbook that integrated with brands in a different way. The typical Amazon agency model before Cartograph was that the agency's job was to really do I call it the above the hood work, where, we'll run your ads, we'll make your listings look pretty, we'll make recommendations for coupons and promotions, but everything else with the business is up to you. And our model said, no, to do Amazon properly, that channel needs to be integrated into your total business, particularly in operations and finance. What you're doing in other channels, what you're doing at Costco, what you're doing at Walmart, all ties back to Amazon. We're in an era of algorithmic price matching, so no channel lives in a vacuum. How do we execute Amazon in a clean way that works in harmony with the business that doesn't cause a lot of collateral damage along the way? In doing that, we built Cartograph into the largest Amazon agency for consumer packaged goods brands. So we've worked with over 200 brands. We've managed and drove over $500 million in Amazon retail sales and been key players in incubating a lot of brands from early stage startup to successful exits. I had the privilege of stepping away to pursue my passion project, which is Arterra Pet Science. And the inspiration for that was my dog Arturo. I adopted him my last year out of college. A little bit of background on our story. I developed some health problems that conventional medicine was just not really able to help with. And so I had to become my own advocate and go really deep down some medical rabbit holes to find solutions to my own issues. And in so doing, not only did I completely resolve those issues, but I found this tool set of functional medicine that allowed me to really upgrade my performance, my health, my vitality, and well-being. When I adopted Arturo, he was a 4 or 5-year-old stray. And as he started to get older into middle-aged, I wanted to put him on a preventative supplement regimen with the goal of extending his health span runway as long as possible. And I looked around at the state of the pet supplement landscape, and I candidly thought that I could do this better myself. So I started DIYing a formula for him from human grade supplements. And every year, as we would see a new sign of degenerative aging, that was my cue to either add something to his regimen or to tweak the dose. And we got him to 16 and a half in almost perfect health with great quality of life until the very end. So we exceeded his life expectancy by over 50%. But this came at a cost because I'm a total nerd. My husband and I bought an industrial pharmaceutical powder mixer to streamline this and make it even easier. But even with that, we were spending an hour or two each week and about $500 a month on his supplements. And as eccentric as that sounds, we knew it was making a huge impact because every time we'd take him to a new vet, they were just floored that he was as old as he was because they weren't seeing many of the signs of degenerative aging that they would expect for a dog his age. And the inspiration for Arterra was to take that level of care that Arturo got and to make it accessible for everyone. We've now launched our product product, our adult and senior formula. And we've worked with board certified leading integrative veterinarians to upgrade the formula to develop an even better product. We've taken all of that work that we did for Arterra and we've put it into one easy bacon flavored scoop that you can add to your dog's food. We are live for sale now on arterrapet.com, and we will be launching our supplements on Amazon in late May. So stay tuned for that. One of our goals with Arterra is beyond being the one supplement that your dog needs to cover all of their preventative health bases, we want to solve unmet needs in the veterinary medical landscape and just, look at sleepy categories and product categories and rethink and reinvent them. And so to that end, we launched the world's first anti-cavity toothpaste for dogs that supports active remineralization. And in human toothpaste, for a long time, we've used fluoride. And you can't do that in dog toothpaste because fluoride is unfortunately toxic and bioaccumulative when you swallow it. And you cannot tell your dog not to swallow their chicken-flavored toothpaste. So we used a really cool NASA-developed material called nanohydroxyapatite. And so it's just now in the last couple of years started making its way into the human toothpaste market in the US, and we're the first to use it for veterinary application. When I talk to vets about our supplement, they get it, they're excited, but boy, do they light up when I tell them about the toothpaste because it really solves a need, and hopefully we can keep a lot of dogs from having to go under unnecessary general anesthesia and have painful tooth extractions. And so that product is also live on Amazon. I'm here to share some inside tips and tricks from years in the front lines of Amazon to help brands think about how to approach the channel and how to succeed and execute successfully for their pet brands.
Yeah, I think it's super inspiring that this formula is not something that started as commercial. It started as something that you and your husband, you did a lot of hard work to get to that 40 ingredient formula for your dog Arturo. And then now you're finally adding some science backing to it with the vet partnerships and then commercializing it. So I think that adds not just credibility, but a lot of positive encouragement for other entrepreneurs out there who are doing something similar, maybe for their dogs or for other loved ones, and are thinking about commercializing it and making it more accessible. And I think it's very cool that your toothpaste is the first one with that remineralizing ingredient. I use that for Birdie. It sounds really cool. And all of your products and the focus of your company really is coming to life with this. I think it would be really interesting to take a step back and think about, okay, when you were launching and planning for Arterra Pet Science, how did you think about all of the different online and offline channels? And how did you decide eventually to start with the vets and then launch on Amazon and also on your own website? And how has that evolved?
Sure. I think we had a few thought processes here. One, we do have expensive and premium product with a very novel value proposition that's really totally different from the $30 glucosamine chew era of legacy pet supplements. The veterinary channel is long-term very important for us. They can really be good frontline advocates. And one thing to remember about vets is most of them are not in this industry for the money. They're there because they care about and love animals. And so when we can show that we have a product that produces results and can, turn the lights back on, particularly for senior dogs who are really slowing down, they get excited about that and they want to tell their patients. And so we've given them this new tool. And that channel is really important for us. To vets' credits, they want to see, first of all, is this product safe, but also does it work? Customer testimonials are great for e-commerce, but when we're trying to convince a skeptical vet, we feel like we're much more empowered. So what we've chosen to prioritize at our launch, with the caveat that we do ultimately intend to be an omnichannel brand, is our direct-to-consumer website channel and then Amazon, because that is my expertise. It seems like a missed opportunity to not focus on that channel, and it can be a very powerful one if it's done well. But then also direct to consumer, because we want to take our message directly to our customers. Again, we have a very novel value proposition, and there's been a lot of workshopping and iteration and trial and error to figure out how to communicate our very comprehensive Swiss Army knife of a product that basically replaces an entire shelf of condition-specific formulas. And direct to consumer is a better way to make that message because we're not constrained to telling our entire product story on an 8-inch piece of retail spacing. We can do that on a more robust landscape of our PDPs on our website, and we can also use modern algorithmic audience building and targeting to find those customers. And then we also look to market comps. I think a brand that I really respect is AG1. Easiest way to explain to investors what we're doing is we want to be AG1 for dogs, the one daily supplement you need. I actually think our product is a lot more substantial. I'm not knocking AG1s, but theirs is essentially a souped up multivitamin, and ours is a very comprehensive blend of functional ingredients that are really doing something different. But AG1 has built a $1 billion brand entirely on direct to consumer, selling a $100 a month multivitamin. And so if they can do that and we have a more substantial product, we felt like we could replicate that same journey that they took. The year ahead for us is really about focusing on our direct-to-consumer sales on our website and about Amazon. And then we have an expansion plan into omnichannel in the years ahead. And I'm happy to share some previews and at least our thought process on go-to-market for some of those channels. With PetSmart and Petco, we've got Chewy.com, which is a huge player in the e-commerce space. And then we have independent pet, which is a lot larger than I think a lot of brands realize, but is also a lot more complicated to access and execute.
By independent pet, do you mean independent pet shops, brick and mortar?
Yes. So independent pet shops, there are like the more recognizable chains, things like Hollywood Feed is pretty big in most of the country. Think like Premium, and that's kind of a biggest chain you get in that channel. But a lot of these are mom and pop pet stores that might have 1, 2, 3 locations, but collectively they have a larger store footprint. There's 6,000 to 7,000 of them. They drive 30% of all dog food purchases. So if you have a premium product, that is where a lot of the premium customers are going. And they have a significant benefit of generally a highly educated, highly trained staff that can help facilitate consumer education about your products. The challenge on the flip side of that is it's a very fragmented landscape. Instead of, 1 or 2 big retail relationships, you're dealing with dozens or maybe hundreds. And a lot of those owners can be very particular about their partnerships. They can be offended or put off by presence in other channels. And so it ends up becoming very political and strategic to really tap that market.
I imagine for that kind of fragmented type of sales, would you go through distributors to make it easier for yourself?
Yeah, so there's different ways to approach this, and it depends on the scale of your brand and what your ambitions are, and also the nature of your product. If you have a frozen dog food, like you're going to need to go through a distributor. If you're selling premium pet harness, there's different options that come into place. We, by the way, have not launched in independent pet yet, so I'm kind of sharing some of my notes and research in our diligence for this channel. So take it with a healthy grain of salt. Some are happy to buy direct and even sometimes prefer that. Others will go through a distributor, but in any case, going through a distributor doesn't really solve the relationship problem, because a lot of this channel is very much about the owners feeling like they have an authentic relationship with the brand, that they understand the products, who's making them, and can really put their stamp of approval and vouch for them. Because what quality independent pet shops are, and this is hugely valuable for pet owners in the pet community, is the good ones really view themselves as a filter, as curators for the best of products to meet specialized and discerning pet parent needs in a different way. And that's not to discredit some of the more, mass pet platforms, but I think certainly to a higher standard. It's that curation, their role as curator also often comes with the expectation of stronger and more direct relationships with brands, which just take time to service. If you're a small team with 3 or 4 employees, you're probably going to have to hire a rep. There are specialized brokers and sales reps that specialize in this channel, or you're going to have to hire somebody dedicated in-house and probably go territory by territory on a, really strategic basis to build out that footprint. And then of course, there's pet shows, there's Super Zoo, there's Global Pet, and there's also veterinary targeted shows where you can meet and network with a lot of those owners.
So it sounds to me that the overall strategic focus right now is to prioritize D2C sales on your website, and also, have a certain percentage of revenue coming from Amazon, which is facilitated by the agency that you founded. They're managing your listings and your ads. And also you mentioned a consultant. If we were to break it down into percentages, what would be the percentage of mind share on your D2C sales versus Amazon?
Yeah, I'm using a very rough generalization. I would say about 50-50. And I think part of this is we launched an MVP product that was in a form factor and at a price point that was not well suited for Amazon. We wanted to get some learnings quickly and get some customer feedback. The first analysis to do, the right ratio of where does Amazon fit, conversation we've had hundreds of times with brands is, how should I think about Amazon in relation to my DTC business? First, let's frame up pros and cons of those channels. So the benefit with DTC is you get to own that customer relationship. And particularly if you have a consumable product that lends itself to a subscription model, it's much easier to control the terms of that subscription, to control the management of that subscription, and overall just own and upgrade the customer experience above and beyond what Amazon can provide. Amazon, on the other hand, is the overwhelmingly largest e-commerce platform that gives you access to a huge built-in audience of customers. It solves for a lot of the trust problem for young brands. Customers may be hesitant to give their credit card and set up a subscription with a new brand that they've never heard of, but if they see you on Amazon and know that they get immediate gratification with next day or same day Prime delivery, and and they see the social proof of, a lot of reviews on that Amazon platform, it can be a really effective way for brands to find new customers. And Amazon also has an incredibly robust advertising ecosystem. I prefer it. I think dollar for dollar, it's a better spend than Meta or Google for most brands. But it's also harder. The terms of subscription are really in Amazon's hand. They do have a subscribe and save program, but it doesn't lend itself as well to subscription models. If you're selling a pet accessory, for example, that's really a one and done purchase, Amazon is exceptional for that. But before deciding where to prioritize between the two channels, I always recommend that brands first do a very detailed contribution margin analysis of their both unit margin and overall channel margin economics for those two channels. Load in every cost you can think of in both of those channels. Of course, you have your product COGS, but then you have your pick, pack, and ship cost, whether you're using a 3PL or whether you're doing that through Amazon's warehouse. Those are notable. Often, unless a brand has a lot of volume, can cost more just in shipping costs to ship a package on your DTC website to a customer than all of Amazon's fees, including their sales commission, inclusive of shipping. And this is really where Amazon often pays for itself. And then you have to look at your CAC. The CAC is going to be different between channels, and also the value of that CAC is going to be different, because if you spend, $100 to acquire a recurring revenue subscriber on your DTC website, but you could spend $50 to acquire a one-time customer on Amazon who's not locked into a recurring subscription, then you have to think about, how do I weight and value the lifetime value of that customer in channel A versus channel B? All of your associated labor costs, your agency fees, your creative cost, your review building and sampling programs, load all of that in as best you can. If one channel is substantially more profitable for you than the other, then I would say lean into that. What I encourage brands to try to do is design their channels, design their products, their unit margin economics to be as close to parity as possible. That's something that we've done for our brand, because our margin dollars, our contribution margin dollars, which I think is really the thing any good sustainable business is optimizing for economically, are roughly comparable between channels. We're agnostic. We want to get our product out there. We want to find new customers. We want to get it into as many households and dogs as we can. So whether they find us on Amazon and we build our relationship there, whether they find us on DTC, or whether they start on one channel and ultimately end up on another, doesn't really matter to us. If you are roughly margin neutral between channels, we even recommend for a lot of brands to put a buy on Amazon option on your DTC page. So imagine, you have two checkout options on your product page, and one says add to cart and the other says buy on Amazon. We have tested this over and over again. If you give the customer the option to buy on Amazon, once you've paid Meta their cost per click and you've done all the work to get that customer to your PDP, to your website, when given those two options to check out, a customer is significantly more likely to make any purchase at all when given that Amazon option. Now, you will be splitting some of your overall share and moving some of that that would have otherwise happened on DTC to Amazon. But if you're optimizing for total number of new customers and total contribution dollars, you are better off giving customers both options. For brands that do that, we'll also strongly encourage them to sign up for Amazon's brand referral bonus program. And if you refer traffic to Amazon for sales of your own branded products, it basically gives you a custom tag, a custom URL. If somebody starts on your website or starts on Facebook or starts in a magazine article or a blog post, however, through that link and buys your products, Amazon will give you a 10% rebate back on the commission you pay them. And so their selling fee effectively drops from 15% down to 5%, which over the life of a business, that actually can shift the economic calculus of should we be pushing customers to Amazon or not. Amazon's huge shipping efficiencies that they can often fulfill a package that might cost you as the brand $12, $13 to ship, that they can do that for $4 or $5, and you take their sales commission from down to a net 5%. Amazon can actually often be more profitable on a first sale, first order basis than DTC. There's polarizing opinions on all of this. Obviously, I have kind of a pro Amazon bias from my background, and the devil's always in the details, right? It's how you execute it. But I really encourage brands to lean into Amazon early on, but with some really important other caveats and watch outs, because there's some real trap doors that you can accidentally fall through if you don't know to look for them.
I think it's really interesting that you think about it holistically. You think about two different channels as equally viable options to get your brand out there and to access your customers. And what is especially interesting is that one channel is complementing the other. As an example, you mentioned external traffic on Amazon is increasingly favored by Amazon. So as an Amazon seller, we not only have to do our PPC really well within Amazon, our ads, but we also have to make sure that our socials and our direct-to-consumer websites are linking back to Amazon to take advantage of that discount. And then on your DTC website, and I think this is super cool, I want to try that on our website too, it's almost validation, okay, we are not scam. If you want, you can buy on Amazon. It's almost like a Trustpilot badge on our website. So I really love that. And yeah, I want to start with the D2C side of things and then end with Amazon and the caveats that you mentioned. How are you setting up your website and your team, both internally and externally, of people who are making sure that your D2C marketing and retention loop is working well?
Sure. So heavily caveat this that we are 4 months into an MVP launch. And so we are building the airplane in the air while we're flying it. So we have a pretty lean team here at Arterra. We have a CMO, we have a head of operations, we have a couple support team members blocking it. And then we have an Amazon person I brought over from years of previous working relationship. We work together to manage the DTC channel. We are built on Shopify. There are a lot of capabilities that are on my wish list that I would love to have for our brand in terms of customization of the customer journey and the customer experience. But, unfortunately, that was going to add a ton of, and when I say ton, I mean 6-figure plus development costs, but also a much higher maintenance lift. And we made the decision, like a lot of brands do, to build on Shopify. There's other options available. There's WooCommerce. There's others that offer similar value props. But as a lean team, we standardized to Shopify because it has the most kind of universal support. Any sort of third-party tool you can imagine that you might need, somebody's probably built it. Any tool, any warehouse, any WMS, any ERP, everyone has a Shopify integration locked and loaded. And so instead of having to do custom project every time you want to add a feature or capability or onboard a new partner or a new backend capability, we're able to use readily available off-the-shelf plugins to build something that maybe only 90% of the way toward our final vision is pretty good and is a lot more cost effective and prevents us from having to have an in-house web developer and, full web team.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to rely on integration at the outset. And then once you know what works, what doesn't, and you know how to effectively spend that development dollar, it makes sense to customize the solution. And you mentioned third-party logistics. Did you decide on which to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will happily give them a recommendation because they are awesome. We are working with OSW Logistics, which is an acronym for Our Service Works, out of Dallas, Texas. They also offer great logistics services. And so this is my PSA as somebody who's onboarded dozens of 3PLs. I mentioned our work at Cartograph ended up leaning very heavily into the logistics side. It's almost a truism with 3PLs that when you talk to consumer brands, nobody loves their 3PL at best. You usually hear okay, my 3PL is fine. That's the trade-off, right? Because, you can either spend $1 million to vertically integrate and build an in-house warehouse and stand up, your own WMS and buy your own forklifts and hire a team, or you can rent space in somebody else's warehouse. But the trade-off to renting space in somebody else's warehouse is what you lose is customization often and personalized service for your brand. And then the little things that you may want to do to customize your experience, anything from inserts to special rules about prioritizing or staging different shipping tiers for different customers. Everything just gets a lot more complicated when you're trying to fit it into a one size fits all model for an operation that has to support potentially hundreds of other brands at the same time. I will say one big advantage that 3PLs have and something brands should negotiate are shipping rates, because when you're shipping through a 3PL's shipping account, they get negotiated bulk pricing from the major carriers. And these discounts are huge, right? What you may pay as a small brand shipping a couple hundred packages a month, a 3PL with significant consolidated volume is often paying 70% less. A good 3PL is going to pass on a meaningful portion of those fees to you. And in some cases, they really look at that as their profit driver. If they can break even on your pick, pack, and materials, but make a 30% markup on the shipping charges that they're passing through, that can often be the most lucrative part of the engagement for them. As a small brand, you're not going to have a lot of leverage there. And so kind of look for the best value you can. But as you get scale, that's something that's negotiable. And so that's a piece that I really encourage, particularly e-commerce focused brands to look into. I think a 3PL is basically a necessary evil for a small brand because it's just not practical to stand up your own operations unless you have a very bespoke boutique business. You need to go this route. I'll say within 3PLs too, there's a growing movement. There's a big push toward everything being high tech and super automated. And our experience with these guys with that model is that it just doesn't work that well. That if you have a very simple, straightforward product that doesn't require kitting work or SOPs, fine. But if you kind of deviate at all outside of the standard that the electronic templates have been built for, we end up having a lot of problems. I actually prefer a nice mix. We want real-time visibility into our inventory. We want robust integrations and customization, but we also want human points of contact and like real people that where we can pick up the phone and talk through, okay, this customer didn't get an insert in their package. What went wrong? Or we're looking at launching a new product in this configuration and we need to build a 3-pack. And so what are our options to intelligently kit that 3-pack? Do we do a poly bag? Do we do an overbox? Help us explore and think through the pros and cons. Like that type of partnership is really important. And that's where I'll say OSW has really shined. I've never had a 3PL integration out of dozens go as smoothly as ours did with them, particularly if you're in the Texas area, they're outside of Dallas. I hope you'll make them your first call.
That's really good to know. You mentioned that they're local to you in Texas. So would you recommend that brands go for those that are headquartered locally?
Not necessarily. So it depends on the nature of your product. If you're selling perishable products that have to be shipped on like dry ice, you need to be staged in at least 3 locations. You need to be East Coast, West Coast, and Central. That's a probably really niche topic. The most important thing I will tell a young brand is whether they're in your backyard or whether they're across the country, go visit your 3PL. Any 3PL worth their salt will welcome you. They will give you a tour, especially if you have products staged there. Ask to see the build SOP for your product. So almost all brands have some degree of order build out, and a lot of them have kitting. Go see the station and actually see step A, B, C, D, E, how that's getting built out, and have the visual in your mind for what's actually happening to your product. And especially if you're doing multi-packing, if you're doing kitting, and this becomes really relevant for Amazon when you start selling 3-packs, actually understand how that workflow works, seeing where your product is on the shelf, what it means when somebody goes and pulls a case, what that special projects unit that's building your multi-packs does, and what it looks like when your orders are actually getting prepped and shipped. Consistently, I mean, at Cartograph, we would take new employees on field trips to our 3PL partners. Unless you live and breathe logistics and operations, it's very abstract until you see it in person. In our case, though, it was kind of coincidental that they happened to be in our backyard, but it is really nice. Like when you reach scale in shipping, I guarantee you something somewhere is going to go wrong in your fulfillment and logistics, and it's going to gum up the works in a bunch of channels. And being able to be there, in our case, they're like 3 hours away. But if I need to go to my 3PL and actually roll my sleeves up and figure out how do we fix this, that's a big perk, I would say, of them being so close.
So it's a cherry on top, but not a requirement for most brands that are just starting out.
Correct. But if you are going to have one 3PL, do think about the shipping cost implications. If you're just on the East or the West Coast, shipping rates are based on what zones you're shipping to, which is basically like distance from your point of origin. If 2/3 of your customers are on the East Coast and your warehouse is on the West Coast, that's probably roughly accurate. You're going to spend 20% more over the next year in shipping costs. And if you have an e-commerce heavy business, shipping costs are often the largest line item. Sometimes they're more than COGS, depending on the brand. So do be mindful of the implications of shipping rates relative to your 3PL's location. And if you have to pick one, I would say try to optimize for somewhere central.
Okay, so we just covered the logistics side of things. And I think this is the perfect time for us to be having this conversation. For context, Goodnight Fetcher, my memorial brand for pets, we started off as an Amazon brand. And now I'm kind of outsourcing that to somebody who's like Cartograph to really take the lead on it and then take a backseat now that it's scaling to start our own D2C website and that ecosystem. So obviously there's 3PL and then there is the website. And I think marketing is so important. The SEO element, writing blogs, and then there is social media, making content that is both ads and non-ad material, running those ads on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And then of course, there's Google ads. Is one person doing that on your team, or is there somebody different?
Well, for a couple months early in our life cycle, yes, one person because we're a small team. But as we're expanding our team, we've got a CMO, we've got a contract ad buyer, we've got a creative agency who is managing our, there's kind of multiple buckets to this, right? There's your social media presence, which is kind of the organic content you're posting. There's your paid assets. What are you pumping into the paid media funnel? And that's kind of a creative partnership that's orchestrated by the brand between the creative team and the ad buyer. And then there's your influencer and community management relationship. Who's responding to your your comments? Who's building the SOP and templated responses to different types of customer questions? How do you make sure that happens in your authentic brand voice and doesn't sound like people are interacting with a robot? How do you identify the right influencers for your brand and reach out to them? A lot of influencers require paid partnerships. So how do you filter and know which ones are going to be worth that? And how do you negotiate and structure those deals? I think and this is a lesson for us, right? Because coming from Amazon world, this was kind of another side of the equation that I'd always had peripheral exposure to, but it's a theory is very different from application. I think the conclusion we came to pretty quickly was it's way too much for a lean team to do by themselves. Although I don't know, Elsa, you're a marketing machine. Sometimes I wonder if you secretly have two clones of yourself because of how prolific your output is. But for me, I'm a product guy, I'm an operations guy, I'm a finance guy, and I can even do sales, but marketing is kind of its own thing. So we've built out a team of partners largely through agency and contractor relationships. And that's really how we plan to proceed for the next at least year and a half. And I think long term, as brands reach scale, I think brands want to own most of those capabilities in-house, but you have to reach a scale where the make versus buy decision is more obvious for the business. But ultimately, you don't want to be dependent on external partners to manage your destiny, or at a bare minimum, you want partners to be there to augment your in-house capabilities. So what we noticed with Cartograph is a brand might be paying us a 5% commission on sales, and from taking them from zero to a few million in sales, that seems like a bargain. And then you get to a point in a scale where, okay, we've built this $10 million business on Amazon, and they're looking and saying, okay, well, we're paying Cartograph $500,000 a year. We could just build this ourselves. And so that make versus buy analysis, I think, is interesting for brands to think about because, okay, yes, could you hire a competent Amazon person for less than $500,000? Sure. But that Amazon person is also probably going to need a support person. If your channel is that big, you're going to need another set of arms. So now you're looking at a headcount of 2 people. And even if you hire the best Amazon person in the world, that information and expertise has a shelf life of like 12 months because the platform's always evolving and changing. Having an agency that is fully staffed with the right support structure to replace 1 or 2 in-house hires, but also is on the bleeding edge of every time there's a new program, a policy change, the back-end systems change, having somebody who's up to speed on that and also can learn across dozens of different brands and cross-pollinate those learnings to level up and bring those best practices often has a lot of value. I speak to Cartograph from my own experience there, but I think that analysis is probably correct for almost any external agency partner. And also just know, right, if you love your vendor and your consultant, but you feel like you're outgrowing them for structural reasons, they want to keep your business. So talk to them and figure out, can you negotiate a reduced scope or reduced workload so you can keep the parts of them that are really hard for you to build in-house and then build those capabilities yourself?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful. And I love that you brought up the buy versus build decision. I think it's something that brand owners, we should constantly evaluate. I really like that as a reminder. And I think for us, for Goodnight Fetcher, we follow this model where we're just doing everything in-house, myself and my team of VAs that are based in the Philippines. And then once we have a model that works, once it gets way too much, like for example, Amazon, it was like, okay, we're getting good at it, but then it's also becoming a full-time job for me and my team of VAs. So that's when we know, okay, time to outsource. And then the benefit of doing something yourself first in-house is that once you outsource it, you know when somebody is doing a good or a bad job.
That is such a good point, Elsa. I cannot emphasize that enough too, that it's never a good idea to abdicate your responsibility to understand what's happening entirely to an agency partner, even if you're hiring somebody. I told them this on day one. It's like, I'm going to drive you absolutely nuts for the first 2 months asking a ton of questions because I need to understand and assimilate into my kind of neural map how this channel works. And then once I build that understanding, then I can start to pull back and the relationship changes. But yeah, it's really hard unless you've been some degree of hands-on in-house. It's hard to manage an agency because you don't always know what you're asking for. And to your point, you don't really know if you're getting good information or if they're doing a good job or not. You just don't have a barometer for it.
I feel like we should have you on the show, at least 2 times to talk about different subjects. But you mentioned earlier that there's some caveats that brands should look out for when deciding whether or not to sell on Amazon. So do you want to shed light on that?
Sure. So there's a lot, and you're right. We could have probably several follow-up discussions about this, but I think the first thing to note is, where are you launching Amazon in your brand's life cycle? And if Amazon is coming late to the table and you're already present, and if you were a brick and mortar brand first, you're going to have a different set of considerations and also cons to the channel. But if you're Amazon day one, it's also going to sometimes limit your options in brick and mortar and in other channels. And so it's good to kind of take these in both directions. I don't think it's possible for me to be totally exhaustive in this list, but I can give a couple examples. So the first is understanding the role of price matching. There's actually antitrust investigations and litigation active right now. The DOJ has been been looking at this. This could change. The legal landscape for this could change in the next couple years. But for right now, I think rule of thumb for brands to keep in mind is pricing no longer exists in a vacuum. Once you are online, whether you're on Amazon, whether you're on Walmart, whether you're on Chewy, all of these big sites are algorithmically price matching each other. And if you're on Thrive Market and you negotiate funding for a special 20% off promo for them for the month of April, well, Amazon's price bots are going to see that within hours, and they're going to price match Thrive Market. The net of it is no matter how you're selling to Amazon, whether you're on Vendor or Seller Central, they're going to hand you the bill and say you need to pay for this price match. The 20-30% velocity boost you got on a channel that's 15% the size of Amazon may end up costing you all of your profit on the Amazon channel that month because the cross-channel implications weren't thought through. Amazon should be a pillar of your strategy if you can maintain roughly consistent pricing across channels. It's really hard to enforce a MAP policy, but if you can, try to stick to those guns and know that price matching never happens in a vacuum. And usually the smaller the retailer, if they are online, this is one nice thing about independent pet is they usually aren't broadcasting their stuff online, or they fly under the radar of Amazon's price bots. You can get away with it. If you're at any retailer large enough to have a notable online presence, just assume that whatever funding you give them, you're ultimately going to have to give to all of your other channels as well. The other big thing to watch out that a lot of brands kind of sleepwalk into off this ledge is the problem of third-party resellers. And you mentioned distributors earlier. Most of Amazon's volume works. So there's a sliver of Amazon's volume. It's about 30%, I think now, goes through kind of a traditional retail relationship similar to like Walmart, where Amazon is placing purchase orders in bulk every Monday morning, ordering from you at wholesale prices. They buy the inventory, they own it, they control pricing. That's easier for brands to understand because it works like other channels. But where most brands are going to start, if you're less than a $10-15 million business on Amazon, you kind of have one option, and that's to sell through their third-party channel, through their platform called Seller Central. Most of that volume happens through a program called Fulfillment by Amazon, or FBA, which is basically the world's largest and most sophisticated consignment program. So through FBA, I can send 1,000 units of this SKU into Amazon in bulk, and it sits in Amazon's warehouses. Amazon might kind of fan it out through their distribution network so they can be closer to point of sale for customers, but that inventory is in Amazon's possession, but you still own it. So Amazon is effectively just warehousing it for you. You then can control your listing, you can set your price, you can run any coupons or promos or advertising you want. And when the item actually sells, Amazon picks, packs, and ships it to the end user on your behalf and then collects a sales commission, and then they charge you a shipping and fulfillment fee. This is a really efficient model, and it can be great for brands because it allows you to access the world's largest online retail platform, which also has the world's most efficient fulfillment, logistics, and pricing to be able to get your product to customers nationwide with one-day delivery with economics that you are not going to be able to beat by yourself. But the caveat to FBA, Amazon is also an open marketplace. So I can ship 1,000 units of my own inventory in, but if somebody else, anybody else gets their hands on legitimate inventory of my product, they can also send it to Amazon and sell it under the same listing, and they can sell it at whatever price they want. So I might say that this product has a retail price of $39.99, but if mom and pop with access to my wholesale distributor and take advantage of a special promo that maybe I ran with the intention of them selling this in their own retail storefront, but they choose instead to send it into FBA and undercut my price by $5. Now they are winning the buy box. So if you go on Amazon, you'll often see there's kind of one default offer. It's usually the buy now or buy with one click offer, but then you'll see 47 others. And if you click on that, you'll see a bunch of different offers at different prices. And Amazon has a formula in what offer gets the buy box. And broadly speaking, it's going to be the cheapest one. I do all this to say, if Amazon is important to you as a channel, it is so important from day one that you be very methodical about controlling your distribution channels and not having a leaky supply chain. If you onboard mom and pop accounts that you're servicing directly, make sure that your agreement with them includes an anti-diversion clause that says they're buying this inventory to sell on their own storefront, but they will not resell it on online marketplaces. And then if they do and you catch them, you can call them on it and you can cut off their inventory. Where this gets tricky is once you get into distributors. And I know in pet, the landscape's a bit different. I have a lot of experience with UNFI and KeHE, which, collectively are, 90+% of the grocery distribution landscape. That can get a lot trickier because once your item's at UNFI, it can automatically become available to thousands of different retailers of varying sizes, and you kind of lose control over this. And these platforms have gotten better over the last few years at giving brands, usually for a price, giving brands the ability to cut off certain buyers of their product, but it's really messy. It's really expensive. The distributors just really don't have a lot of incentive to fix this problem unless they can extract money from you, the brand, to solve it. Because in their mind, they're running a low margin, volume business, and their pricing, because of the tier of those mom and pop sellers, those are often some of their most profitable customers. They don't really want to shut off the spigot just so that you can control your Amazon direct sales that don't benefit them at all. Similarly, Costco is a really big one. The way Costco's margin structure works, Costco doesn't make money on the products they sell. They make money on their memberships, and they basically cover their operating cost from product. And so that means, roughly a 16% margin on shelves for the product they buy. And you stack that on top of the fact that because of Amazon's volume, brands are going to Costco with their absolute best price for a value-packed item, and then Costco is marking it up at the lowest markup of any retailer on the planet. Let's say you have a 7-figure Amazon business and you get a SKU into Costco. Good for you, by the way, because Costco's, I love Costco as a customer, and they're my favorite retailer to sell to. I've sold to every major retailer in the country, and I think Costco is the best. But if you get a SKU in Costco, it will very likely wreck your Amazon channel, because the nature of Costco's margin structure almost universally means that unless you're proactive about this, a reseller can go to Costco, buy your product off a club shelf, ship it into Amazon under FBA. They will almost always be able to undercut your Amazon price on a cost per unit, cost per serving, cost per ounce basis. And now you've built all this momentum, and Amazon's a momentum-based platform, right? Sales beget sales. You start hemorrhaging all of this volume to some rogue third-party listing where A, the money's hitting your Costco P&L at a lower margin, and B, you've lost control of your brand because somebody else has created that listing. They're owning the copy, they're owning the pictures, and there are tools through like Amazon Brand Registry to kind of take back control of that. But once it happens, it's kind of like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. Once it's been dispensed, it's really challenging. If you know you're going to Costco, you should always take your Costco Club SKU and launch it on Amazon before it hits Costco shelves. And there's a pricing analysis you can do to basically triangulate what would a reseller who buys it at Costco, what would their break-even price be on Amazon. And if you sell at that price point, it usually ends up working really nice in the Amazon model. But I flag this for brands because I've seen so many brands walk headfirst into like an $8 million problem here. And then usually the bigger and healthier the business, the bigger the promise is. These reseller operations are so sophisticated. We have caught resellers pulling semi-trucks up to Costco loading docks and diverting entire pallets of inventory before it even goes on the Costco floor into that truck and shipping them straight into Amazon. Like, they are hyper efficient. So if you're not aware of this going in, you can really wreck your channel because it helps your Costco sales, but you can fatally wound your Amazon business that you may have spent thousands of man hours and potentially millions of dollars to build.
That's a really good heads up. It's like, as brand builders, we spend all of this effort up front on R&D and on prototyping and on getting it to commercialization. And now we have to protect it and make sure that our listing doesn't get hijacked.
Yes.
I remember you mentioned to me in one of our earlier conversations that some independent pet shops, and correct me if it's wrong, actually don't like it if they see a young brand selling on Amazon.
Yeah. Put yourself in the shoes of Jim's local premium dog supply, and he's got 2 locations and it's his family business, and he's already getting squeezed on every side by PetSmart and Petco on one side. He's got Walmart and Target pushing lower quality products at margins, and Costco that he can never compete with. And his point of differentiation is to sell curated, really high quality products with like a premium, high touch customer service and education experience. But he's never going to be able to compete on price with those other channels. What those retailers hate, and I don't blame them for this, is they do all this work to carefully select a brand, train their staff. Customers will come in and browse and then pull up their phone in the store and say, oh, I can get this for $2 cheaper on Amazon. Thanks for telling me about it. Now I'm going to go buy it on Amazon. Because for them, everything is more manual and it really is an investment in the brand, the product, the relationship. They view Amazon as something that really undermines this. You can scale this up. I believe it's Sephora or Ulta that just hates Amazon and often won't pick up a brand if they're already on Amazon. Now, the exception to this is if you get so big and you're so successful that everyone has to carry you, they just really don't have a choice because the customer demand is that high. But the real trick is in your growth phase, your first few years, it's worth noting that, yeah, if you're on Amazon on day one, it is going to alienate a lot of these mom and pops. And that's going to be a case by case thing that you have to navigate. One thing thing that can help is by structuring your channel pricing in a way that you can more or less guarantee them or give them reasonable assurances that Amazon's not going to undercut them on price. That's probably one of the best things you can do. Depending on your capabilities and what products you're selling, you can also just have differentiated SKU assortment. You can sell different things on Amazon than you're selling in those channels. The first industry that figured this out was the vacuum cleaner industry. If you've ever tried to buy a vacuum cleaner on Black Friday, you will notice that the models that are for sale on Amazon might be a DC 4811 and the one at Best Buy might be a DC 4812, and it might come with one extra little, attachment or accessory. And they've done that very strategically to break price matching so that it's not possible to do apples to apples price matching across channels. And so there are ways to mitigate this, but it is important for brands to note that you cannot perfectly optimize for every channel. Be very mindful early on of what are the right hero channels for your brand, and really lean into and optimize those hero channels first. Make sure they are fully supported and working and have reached like a sustainable amount of scale before you start proliferating into other channels. Because if you try to do everything everywhere all at once, as good as that movie was, it does not make for a great brand building experience, and you'll paint yourself into a lot of corners.
Yeah, I think that's the issue that we at Goodnight Fetcher ran into early on. One of the biggest channels for retail for memorial products is pet crematories, and obviously human crematories too, and funeral homes. They're so great to work with, and they're very open to new products. And they're the first touch point for a lot of our end consumers. As you're hosting a funeral ceremony or you're cremating your loved one, you might naturally pick up a suitable urn or a memorial product to remember them by. It's a very viable channel in the long term for us, but the math didn't work out. So our COGS is $30, and then we sell on Amazon at around 99 to like 90-ish. And then if we're going to sell to crematories, or even vets, they would demand a 50% margin. So we would have to sell at like 50 or maybe 45. But that means we were only making like $10 per urn after our COGS. So it just wouldn't make sense. But I think what you said is a great idea, is to create some sort of differentiation so that people who are running the crematories won't be like, oh, wait, but why are you selling on Amazon at this price when you're selling at me for double?
Just to workshop that idea as kind of a thought experiment. I mean, ways I might think about differentiating between the channels is you have your personalized medallions. I've got one on my mantle. It's beautiful, by the way, that has Arterra's name on it. That's hard to do on Amazon. Amazon's not well suited to personalization like that. That could be something that is only offered to the crematory and vet channel, but where they make their margin on the urn, and then customer reaches out to you and pays $20 for the personalized medallion, and that's your margin to keep. I mean, just spitballing with different ideas, but let's deconstruct the premise, right? You said COGS of $30, you're selling on Amazon for 90?
Yeah.
Okay. And if a crematorium sold it for 90, you'd have to sell it to them for 45. So you got $15 in gross margin in crematory channel. On surface, you have $65 in gross margin on Amazon. But is it really $65 in gross margin? Because first, you've got to subtract Amazon's 15% selling fee. This is a good for brands to hear. Like, this exercise is important. So, all right, so we've got $90 and 15% of that is $13.50, which leaves you with $76.50 in revenue. Then you've got your FBA and fulfillment fees. So Amazon's commission plus fulfillment fees are 30%. So your $90 becomes $63. So ostensibly, when you take out your COGS, you've got $33 in gross margin. But the X factor here is, what's your acquisition cost? What are you having to pay to drive that sale on Amazon? If you're driving it from your website, then potentially it's lower. Where you're spending ad dollars on Meta or on Amazon to drive eyeballs and ultimately conversion to that listing, you're going to have a CAC. As a rule of thumb on Amazon, it's really difficult to get better than like a 2.0 ROAS. A 2.0 ROAS on customer acquisition is really good. And so that would mean spending $45 to acquire a new customer for an earn for that first sale. And so once you take out, you've loaded in 30% in fees you're paying to Amazon, but if you had a $45 acquisition cost to get a new customer, now you're in negative margins. And I cannot tell you how many brands at Cartograph we audited had to give them the bad news that they're actually losing money hand over fist in the channel and had no idea it was happening, versus in a wholesale channel. But the difference is with Amazon, you might be unprofitable when you fully load everything at the beginning of your life cycle. And on those first sales, this is different if you have a consumable purchase product. We'll call the earn a one-time purchase product. What you are building, though, is momentum in sales that's going to result in more reviews, more organic discoverability and search. And so over time, you start having a larger share of your Amazon sales come in through organic means where you aren't paying to subsidize that sale and acquire that customer. And a healthy mature Amazon business might only have 25, 30% of its sales coming from ad attributed sales, and the rest are organic. Really, the first 2 years of growth on Amazon is all about basically through subsidizing growth and acquisition is getting to that scale where your organic sales that you're not having to pay to acquire are making the overall channel profitable versus a conventional wholesale channel model. Like if you're wholesaling direct to crematoriums, for example, one, you're not going to have direct to consumer shipping costs. You're going to be able to ship them a pallet of inventory at a time through like LTL freight rates, a tenth of the cost to get the product to them, and they handle the last mile handoff to the end customer. You also don't have advertising and acquisition costs. Like they are your front line, like kind of baked into their margin is they are doing the work to sell your product and acquire that customer for you. And so when you fully load all these costs into the channel, often the gap is not nearly as big as it looks on the surface. I'm just kind of using this as like an illustration for how I would encourage brands to think about it and why it's so important to build that waterfall in Excel or hell on a whiteboard to just really load all your costs into both channels and focus everything around contribution dollars rather than revenue.
I think that is such a good point. Yeah, I definitely never thought about it that way. I just thought about, okay, the percentage I have to give Amazon and then the percentage of advertising I have to give, and that adds up to roughly 50%. But I didn't think about the cost to acquire customers. So I feel like the next workshop we do should be a deep dive into that waterfall and to that analysis to get to the contribution margin. Something I've been thinking about is in retail and traditional retail, a lot of people have said, okay, you want to make sure that your FOB landed cost in the US or wherever you're trying to sell is 4 times less than your retail price, the minimum. Do you think this still holds true? If we were to generalize without doing any of that calculation for e-commerce?
Broadly, yes. Certainly for consumables. The exception is the more expensive your item becomes for 2 reasons. If you have a really expensive item, it can be a third or it can even be half, depending on how expensive it is, for 2 reasons. One, there's a point where the nominal margin dollars are large enough that like you can still have a pretty good business, even if the percent isn't as sexy. Those nominal dollars can still make it a good business, even if the percents aren't as attractive. But the other piece is a lot of the cost involved, particularly online with fulfillment, are more easily absorbed into a larger purchase price. For example, if I'm selling a $40 bag of supplements and it costs me $10 to ship this to a customer, 25% of my gross revenue is going to fulfillment. If I'm selling a $100 item on Amazon, it may still only cost me $10 to ship, but that shipping now accounts for 10% of my gross margin. And so the rules are not hard and fast. And the other thing to think about too is the item consumable versus a one-time purchase? Because if you have a consumable product, we really think about that first sale as it's about building that customer relationship and introducing them to your product. And the real investment is that they come back and they buy a second, third, fourth, fifth time. So in that scenario, we would probably have a tolerance for much lower margin, particularly on that first sale, and hope to make it up in volume over the lifetime of that customer relationship. Whereas with a one-time purchase, you really have to think about everything fully loaded where you have to be profitable on the first order, the first transaction. So it depends on your product and your category and your business.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And thinking of the premium category on Amazon, I remember speaking to a brand manager who works at Amazon, who's our account manager. He mentioned that the fastest growing category on Amazon is actually products with price points that are above $250. So it seems like Amazon is really making this push from, okay, yeah, we're the everything store. We have really cost effective, really cheap items, but we also have premium for those who are looking for something with more quality and can add more value. And it seems like your product and mine, we kind of fall into the higher end of the spectrum. So how do you think about when you're putting your supplement, which is more expensive, on Amazon, and how are you thinking about the pricing at launch and then over time?
Sure. I think important to provide some brief commentary here that Amazon has been leaning into luxury for the last decade that I've been working with them. And my high level takeaway, and there's always exceptions to this, is Amazon is not usually the best channel to launch an ultra premium brand. Yours and my brands, they're like decidedly premium. But when you were looking at $150 or $200 price point, or we in our original senior formula, it was $200, those price points just don't work on Amazon. The problem you're up against is you are on a digital shelf where customers have a ton of options and they're going to be seeing your item in search results on a digital shelf shelf next to a lot of other price points. And if you're 3x the average price in that category, it's really hard to get the customer to even click on your ad and get their eyeballs to that page. The brands that are ultra luxury that do succeed on Amazon tend to first build brand equity and brand awareness in other channels first. And they have a built-in audience. There's built-in demand of people who are searching for their products already. And then they launch on Amazon and they unlock the convenience of access to their brand with the convenience of prime shipping. And often a lot of their customers will follow, and that kind of jump starts them and they can start to grow in the channel by themselves. I think both of us, we are premium, but we're not 3x the rest of the category, right? But there's like a reasonable step up. And we also have a very unique product with a unique value proposition. We've intuitively communicated that there's a quality difference here that can get customers to click. And then if you do a good job in your PDP, in your content and telling the story, yes, absolutely. There are premium or affluent customers on Amazon and you can convince them to step up. But I will say ultra luxury do not work well unless you have a lot of built-in brand equity. And if you do have a luxury brand, you need to be really thoughtful about how you're telling the story, both in your title and your thumbnail, also on your product page. And you really need to make sure that you have good review coverage so that you have the social proof that people know what they're getting and that it's a high quality product.
Yeah, seriously. It's a lot of good content and good tips. So it sounds like higher price is workable, but there are some prerequisites, such as a really good listing and some initial validation from the earlier sales through reviews and really high quality listing image and actually ingredients, or maybe packaging that differentiates. I think there could be more creative ways for brands who are looking to add value and add a couple of pricing dollars to their products. So two of the same products can be presented very differently. You know, you might add something as simple as a silky or a satin quality bag instead of like a plastic bag to convey that higher quality. So a lot of these different ways to increase value and increase price point.
I agree with that. I would say though, on Amazon in particular, premium packaging is actually the last place I would differentiate, unless it's something that you can visually communicate very clearly, like at a thumbnail level. If it's something that's just on the back end, once the customer receives the product to surprise and delight them, like at that point, they've already made the purchase decision and your customer might be a little happier or pleasantly surprised, but it didn't help you make the sale. But you can see if anyone's watching on the video feed, like if you've ever bought pet supplements, you're looking at little, orange and playful jars, very different branding. And this is premium. It's matte touch. It photographs well. We're communicating kind of the science forward piece of this. And we want to telegraph in every way that we can that this is a premium product so that customers will see it relative to our price point and run the quick analysis, see our review count, and they're running a little algorithm in their head, whether they realize it or not, to decide whether to even click on the item first. And so like those are the things to optimize for first. At least that's my view.
Yeah, that's so true. When I first received your toothpaste, I noticed I was different. The material of the toothpaste is different from others. It's also matte. A lot of other toothpaste on Amazon are white, and you guys have a dark green color that really differentiates and really speaks to the quality.
Yes, we worked hard on this. And unfortunately, our MVP production run of the supplements had bottles that I was not a fan of, but we just kind of had to make it work. We're really unifying everything across the brand and our form factor to kind of telegraph our positioning and price point and premium value.
Yes, it's really beautiful. I'm so excited for your guys' launch in May. So we're towards the tail end of our session. I want to end with my favorite, which is the parting lightning round. I'll just shoot some questions at you and then off the top of your head, hot take. So what are your thoughts on TikTok as a platform?
I'm going to sound curmudgeonly on this. I have too many social media platforms in my life, and TikTok feels the most insidious because when I swipe, I can feel it trying to hack my brain. And I'm not a fan. And I also think it provides a lot of really low quality information because the few subjects that I am an expert in, I hear a lot of people speaking really authoritatively and confidently about it. And I know that what they're saying is just like not just subjectively untrue, but just dangerously wrong. It can be very effective for brand building. It was a Gen Z platform, but now the demographics show it's Gen Z all the way through Gen X and increasingly now baby boomers. For us, it's been deprioritized because TikTok does not allow pet supplements on TikTok Shop, so it can't be a sales channel for us. It ultimately will be like an influencer and brand building platform for us, but it's not my first pick. And if we do it, I'm going to hire a Gen Z intern who is a TikTok native to tell me how to do it. So I'd probably not a very fun answer.
No, I appreciated that. Okay, how is AI going to change your business?
That's the multi-trillion-dollar question. Right now, no one knows. I think, we're looking at the step changes, improvements in generative AI, and it's not hard to extrapolate out a straight line in a few years where, a lot of white collar and particularly creative jobs are being done by AI. Right now, we haven't been able to make it that useful. We are right now training a chatbot. We get a lot of very detailed product questions because we've got a very specific and complex product, and people want to know, tell me about this ingredient. My dog's on this medication. Can I take this? And so we're actually, training a model to be able to offer better instant customer response. But the trick is figuring out the limits of its capabilities so that we know the exact right time to hand off and escalate to a live human person. And so will we get there in a year? Yes. Are we there today? No. I think the shortest term game changer for brands is going to be in marketing and creative assets. If you want static imagery, looking at like what DALL-E can do right now, it's incredible. You can get a custom, beautiful photorealistic image of a happy senior golden retriever in a meadow with a golden amber sunset. The demos for Sora for generative AI video that OpenAI is working on. Several of those they did were with dogs. There were puppies playing in the snow, a dog sitting at his computer, like typing. Those things look photorealistic. Think of creative marketing potential for that. Because right now, if you have a pet brand, one of the hardest things about doing lifestyle shoots is you have to get dog models who will behave and kind of act on cue and let you get the shots that you want. And being able to have dog food model perfect dogs who can do whatever behavior you can imagine in a photorealistic high quality setting, it really opens up a lot of possibilities. We'll see, but obvious implications for things like ad buying, for creative, for inventory management, for new product innovation, and particularly I think for customer service.
Okay, final question. What topic would you like to hear about on our next podcast?
Actually, it's the one I shared a lot about, which is the independent pet channel. How have brands scaled their independent pet relationships? Do they do it through brokers? Do they do it through field sales teams? What are kind of the margin expectations in the channel? What are the trap doors that they walk through that in hindsight, which they'd known were there? Because I'm piecing together my own neural map of this space to build a strategic plan for 2025. And it's not something that is easy to Google. And, everyone you talk to has different opinions. So that would be helpful for me.
Okay, I'll be on the lookout. All right. Thank you so much. For our listeners, if you need to reach out to John, you can check out his bio and also links to his website and LinkedIn on our website, petfriendlygrowth.com. And let us know if you have any thoughts or questions. And John, thank you again for all the valuable tips that you shared today. I can't wait to have you back.
Thank you, Elsa. It's a pleasure to be here. And if anyone would like to check out Arterra, you can visit us at arterrapet.com, ARTERRAPET.com. And you can use the discount code Arterra30 at checkout for 30% off your first month subscription. I just also want to say I'm so grateful for the business that you've launched. It was wonderful to have a special way to commemorate Arturo. It was a big upgrade from the plain wooden box we got for his ashes. We have him on our mantle with pride, and also just for how helpful and generous you are in this space to build resources and support for pet-centric entrepreneurs. Honored to support your journey along the way however I can. So would love to be back anytime I can be helpful.
Thank you. That sounds like a plan.